After living in Medellin, Colombia for 1 month with my buddy, it was time to head up to the northern coast of Colombia, to the cities of Santa Marta, to the Parque Tayrona, and ultimately to end the new year in Cartagena. Immediately upon arriving in Santa Marta, we checked into our hotel, grabbed a taxi, and immediately headed over to the historic center of Santa Marta. Now, historically speaking, Santa Marta is the second oldest city in South America, but at the same time, it is the oldest surviving city in South America. So the history here and the historic center are extremely beautiful to walk around. Now, because it was Christmas and New Year's, the historic center was extremely lively, with live music playing absolutely everywhere, people walking around, getting drunk, eating, partying, shopping, and everything else in between. After grabbing some food and walking around just a little bit more, just to look at the people, the setting, the city, and the history and the music, my buddy and I decided to call it an early night because the following day we had a big journey ahead of us. The following day, my buddy and I left our stuff in the hotel and we hopped on a bus and made our way over to our next destination, which was Parque Tayrona. Within an hour, we arrived at the Parque Tayrona entrance. Standing outside were a couple anti-corruption military, so I decided to grab a selfie with them.
Our journey into Parque Tayrona begins now. This is a 2-hour trek. That's the easy part, actually. So, we ready?
Sí, señor. We're gonna do this right now. This is Parque Tayrona, and yeah, let's go ahead and continue. That path right there is 2 hours. We're going to trek that. And then tomorrow we're going to go back the other path, which is 4 hours, which is the more fun path. Partway through, there were some horses. So we decided to hop on instead of walking the rest of the way.
Leonidas here in Colombia. We are mount horse. 1 hour, 2-hour destination. The last time I mounted a horse, I actually lost my camera. This happened in Mexico, in a town called Valle del Bravo. So anyways, here's round 2. There's nothing to lose this time except for maybe my phone, but hopefully nothing happens.
I highly recommend getting on a horse because the path itself is extremely muddy and dirty, and at the same time there's lots of horses and people walking through as well. So the horse makes it at least 200% easier. So once again, get on the horse if you get a chance. Then, after about an hour of riding on the horse, we managed to arrive at our destination. But not before taking a couple selfies with my horse, Nina. If you do come to Parque Tayrona, there are several fees you have to pay. There's a park entrance fee, there's a park maintenance fee, and there's a park camping fee as well once you arrive at Cabo San Juan. So make sure to bring yourself plenty of cash in case you do decide to camp here. There are also tents available for you to rent, but keep in mind, don't come here during the busy season because they might not have a tent for you. Despite the overabundance of tourists in Cabo San Juan, the location itself is still extremely beautiful and extremely scenic. So if you do get a chance, when you do come to the northern coast of Colombia, I do highly recommend you check out Cabo San Juan. The following day, it was absolutely sunny, hot, beautiful. The oceans were extremely blue, the sky was extremely blue, the foliage was extremely green. This was an absolutely perfect day to be in the northern coast of Colombia. My buddy and I had to decide whether we would take the 2-hour path and maybe some horses back out of the park, or we would trek through a 4-hour trail that I had trekked through 7 years prior. Now, this took a lot of convincing because my buddy really did not want to walk for 4 hours through the jungle. But after some back and forth, he agreed that you only live once, so we started making our way over to the 4-hour trail to get back out of the park.
On the beaches of Parque Tayrona and the northern coast of Colombia. So we're about 1 hour into the jungle. We have about 2 or 3 hours more to go. All right, Leo here in Parque Tayrona. I'm surrounded by the local indigenous populations. ¿Cómo se llama la gente de aquí? Kogi. The people are called the Kogi people. ¿Y cómo se dice gracias en Kogi?
Senyarde.
Senjande. Senjande. There you go. That's how you say thank you in Kogi. And this guy is a indigenous Ukrainian. Senjande. One more hour into the future. So it's the viewpoint of La Cima. And I'll go ahead and just show you what it is. And there's about 30 more minutes to go. All right, so we are 4 hours in. We are now entering a little town. I think we only have 10 more minutes to go. Igor has allergies. We've almost arrived, and that's quite a nice little walk. Leonidas, last video once we get back into town.
The following day, my buddy and I were both exhausted, and my buddy had to do some work in the hotel. So I decided to venture out on my own, north towards the coastal village of Taganga. Taganga is a fishing village that doubles as a tourist destination for those seeking a cleaner beach, as well as a little bit more peace and isolation from the busyness of Santa Marta. In Taganga, you will find 2 beaches. The Playa de Taganga, which is typically where fishermen will station their boats, and a little bit further out is the Playa Grande, or the Big Beach, which is where most of the tourists will come for a little bit of swimming and a little bit of sunshine.
So nonetheless, this is the last day, once again, here in Taganga. Not too familiar with this beach yet, but it's a very, very scenic location. I do highly recommend you do come and visit here. It looks very, very beautiful. Just going to spend here maybe another hour or so, and then going to head back to the hostel in order to grab the bus to Cartagena.
Then it was time to head out of Taganga Beach, hop in a taxi, head 30 minutes towards Santa Marta, check into my hotel, check out again, and then grab our stuff, head back to the city center, and hop on a bus for a 5 to 6 hour bus ride all the way over to Cartagena. By nighttime, we checked into our hotel in Cartagena. Because it was Christmas and New Year's, hotel prices were insane. So my buddy and I decided to cheap out and get a really inexpensive hostel room just for ourselves within Cartagena. Once again, during Christmas season and New Year's, Latin America loves to put up light shows. So everywhere you went in Cartagena, there was a light show, there was a light statue, there was a light tree. Everything was basically covered in lights. For the first night, we took it really easy because essentially we were extremely tired from our 6-hour bus ride, plus everything that happened from earlier that day. So we went into the historic center of Cartagena, walked around for maybe an hour or 2, and then essentially called it a night for a big day the following day. The following day, we got up nice and early, and it was time to adventure. Cartagena is hot, humid, sunny, and you're going to be sweating a lot. The first order of business in Cartagena was to get ourselves some breakfast in the historic center within the fortress of Cartagena. The historic center was extremely busy with locals, with tourists, and everyone else, simply because not only is it a touristy destination, the city of Cartagena, but it's also New Year's and it's also Christmas at the same time. So all of these events were flooding the streets of Cartagena. Afterwards, my buddy and I made the decision not to stay in the hostel where we checked in, simply because it was a little bit ghetto. while at the same time being extremely hot because there was no central air conditioning. So we found ourselves at a hotel, grabbed our luggage, and then walked through the hot, humid, and sunny streets of Cartagena with our luggage, with our backpacks, all the way to our following hotel. Then, about an hour after blasting the AC in our hotel room to cool off a little bit, we started to make our way down to the next part of our adventure, which was the castle of San Felipe de Barajas. All right, so now we are in Cartagena, Colombia, in the state of Bolívar, and I'm currently on the San Felipe de Barajas fortress. It's this massive, massive fortress that was used to defend mostly against pirates, but on the occasion against various empires that tried to take the Cartagena/Colombia regions from the Spanish Empire. And some interesting facts. The Spanish actually never collected slaves, or apparently they never collected slaves from Africa. They had a system called the asientos, or the asiento system, where they simply outsourced the collection of slaves, and they told other nations, hey, you can bring your slaves to us and we'll buy them from you. But they never had slave generating farms or factories in the Africas, which ultimately meant that Spain had to buy all their slaves from whatever empire was willing to sell them slaves at the time. Another interesting fact, Cartagena was taken over by various pirate groups in the last 400 years. They were captured at least 2 or 3 different times by extremely large pirate forces. And this ultimately caused the city to be destroyed and leveled and go through a very traumatic experience several different times. But ultimately the city recovered and rebuilt once more. And then it was ultimately captured by the pirates once again. Nonetheless, I'm here now in Cartagena with a buddy of mine. We're simply walking around the fortress at the moment. We're going to go momentarily up to another section of the city. It's this convent up in the hills, and there we're going to see more of the city. Now, when we arrived, we simply took a 6-hour bus from the city of Barranquilla. On the bus itself, there wasn't much to see other than the regular lifestyles of the people here and there. But once we arrived in the city of Cartagena, it was already nighttime. So we simply went out, we got a little bit of food all on the main streets, visited the historic center a little bit, walked around, got pestered quite a bit by the locals to go to the various clubs and various bars. And also the prostitution here is fairly rampant. You can see them pretty much everywhere on the streets, especially in the historic center. And for the most part, they'll simply do things such as make a distinct sound that goes at you. So it's quite entertaining for the most part. Nonetheless, Cartagena so far has been a very beautiful city, actually. I'm quite impressed. There are some structures that are dilapidated, so in ruin, several buildings that are unfinished for whatever reason. But for the most part, because we're on the coast, on the Caribbean coast, the weather here is hot, it's sunny. I am completely lathered up in sunscreen, and I actually quite like it. It's nice and warm. If it wasn't for the safety issues or the lack of a proper beach in the city of Cartagena, then I'd actually consider myself living here. But if you take yourself a nice boat out into the islands that are pretty much fairly right next to the city itself, then you can enjoy yourself some proper beaches, potentially, unless of course they're covered in pollution. So nonetheless, some security who are going to tell me to step down in a moment, and I'll see you in the next section. When you do come to Cartagena, I highly, highly recommend you go up to the Convent of Santa Cruz de la Popa, because here you will get the most amazing, amazing view of all of Cartagena.
A couple white boys standing on top of a hill in Cartagena.
Finally, we made our way back down, and my buddy decided to stay in the hotel to get some work done. I, on the other hand, went out and started walking through the historic center and started making my way all around the massive wall that surrounds all of Cartagena. This wall will give you an amazing view of the ocean, as well as the inner constructions and inner historic center of Cartagena. Then once nighttime came around, it was time to party. So my buddy and I headed out and started making our way through the extremely lively streets of the historic center of Cartagena. You would find everything that you would expect from a New Year's festivity and celebrations. Live performances on the streets, open air restaurants, live music, people dancing, people cheering, people dressed up to be fancy, people dressed up to be nomads, and everything else in between. As we were walking through the streets, I noticed 3 girls in one of the bars. So I told my buddy, let's go into this bar right here, because maybe we can grab a couple drinks and then start chatting up the girls. Luckily, they were extremely friendly to a couple of foreigners, so we became friends very quickly. As the night progressed, we managed to sneak our way up into a rooftop party. The view from up here was absolutely amazing. From up here, you could actually see the prostitutes who were down below, essentially waiting for their next clientele. The following day, bright and early, my buddy had to get a couple things done for his work, so I made my way back towards the center and hopped into a walking tour around the city. The guide took us around a couple of the local spots to buy some of the sweet foods that are typical of Cartagena. And we would walk around some of the historic plazas and check out some of the African ladies who dressed up in traditional Colombian dresses. Colombia is also known for its beautiful women, so we walked past one of the agencies that was known for producing some of Colombia's top Miss Universe talents. Despite Cartagena's tragic history of violence, piracy, slavery, and conquest, ironically, the streets are extremely romantic and picturesque. Later that night, my buddy and I got ready to go out one more night in the streets of Cartagena. It was almost the end of the year, so things were getting extremely busy. Somehow, my buddy managed to get himself an online date with an Argentinian girl, so we managed to squeeze our way into one of the top bars within Cartagena. After a little bit of dancing, a little bit of drinking, we hopped into a hostel with another rooftop bar. Up here, I was a little bit tired and just decided to enjoy the music and dance a little bit. The following day, bright and early, my buddy had to leave on to his next adventure, so Leo was left all by himself. I decided to make my way over to one of the areas of Cartagena that were actually outside the fort. This part was called Boca Grande, or the Big Mouth. It was essentially a massive beach area, or almost like a beach peninsula. This seemed like your typical resort central, massive towering skyscrapers in front of prime beach real estate. One of the things I did notice though was that some of the streets were flooded, so eventually when the water levels start to rise, this entire place is going to get flooded. If you do decide to walk along the Boca Grande, I recommend you bring lots of water, an umbrella to block out the sun, and plenty of sunscreen, because it'll take at least 2 or 3 hours to walk the entire stretch of beaches. Later that night, it was finally New Year's Eve, so I didn't want to feel all alone in my hotel, so I went out by myself into the streets of Cartagena. I started looking for events, or making new friends, or anything that could bide my time into the New Year's. Obviously, it was extremely lively. Restaurants, music, performances, more music, more dancing. It was absolutely amazing. Eventually, I started chatting up with a couple tourist girls that I met on the street. They were extremely friendly and extremely accommodating. And within about 30 minutes, we were already pretty much best friends, and we started walking around and enjoying the New Year's fireworks celebrations. The night ended with a couple more drinks, a little bit more dancing, and eventually I went off back to my hotel to pass out completely. The following day, it was pretty much time to leave Cartagena. While I do love the aspect of Cartagena, I do love the idea of it. It's hot, it's sunny, it's very touristy, there's plenty of history, lots of things to learn about the fortress, about the castles, about the piracy, and so many amazing things to do as a tourist. Ultimately, living here, probably not the most amazing idea because it's very hot, very humid, but for tourism, I absolutely have to recommend doing Cartagena. And also, if you do come to the northern coast of Colombia, you also have to check out Parque Tayrona. While Santa Marta is an amazing place, it's probably best to visit for just a day, but Parque Tayrona itself, if you do decide to go, take the 2-hour path in, maybe grab yourself a horse, and then when it's time to head out, you can either do the easy 2 hours back out, or you can do the 4-hour path back out if you have the level of physical fitness and the mental endurance to go through 4 hours of jungle climbing and jungle adventure. The northern coast of Colombia is absolutely beautiful, all the way from Santa Marta into Parque Tayrona and into Cartagena. Those are the places that I visited this time around, and those are the places that I would clearly and highly recommend. Bring yourself an umbrella, bring yourself sunscreen, bug spray, and drink plenty of water while you're there. After Cartagena, I ended up going back to Medellin, Colombia to live there for 2 additional months. So if you have a chance, make sure to check out my full and extensive Medellin, Colombia review. Once again, Leonidas from Cartagena. I hope you enjoyed that video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Salud.